Every year, leaders from across the Muslim world meet, talk, and cooperate. They share religion, they share history. But when it comes to one country, everything changes. They don't confront it directly. They don't openly oppose it, but they keep their distance. That country is Iran. And the real question is not why Iran is isolated. The real question is, why do so many countries choose to avoid it? Because in geopolitics, isolation is not always imposed. Sometimes it is enforced silently by everyone else. On the surface, the Muslim world looks united. Dozens of countries, shared religious identity, common platforms and summits. But geopolitics does not operate on identity. It operates on interests. And when those interests are different, unity becomes symbolic, not strategic. Iran sits inside the system, but it does not operate like the others. And that difference shapes how others respond to it. Iran is not a weak country. It is a regional power with influence far beyond its borders. It has missiles that can reach across the region. It controls access to the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil routes, and it has shown it can disrupt these routes. But more importantly, Iran does not rely only on conventional power. It has built influence through networks beyond its borders, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq to the Houthis in Yemen. These relationships extend Iran's reach far beyond its own territory. This allows Iran to project power without direct confrontation, and that makes it harder to predict and harder to contain. For many neighboring countries, this creates a constant concern, because when a country has power that is both widespread and indirect, it does not just become strong, it becomes unpredictable. And in geopolitics, unpredictability is a risk. This means Iran's influence doesn't stop at its borders. It exists within other countries. And that makes it fundamentally different from traditional power, because it's not just influence from the outside, it's influence from within. Every government makes decisions based on one simple framework. What do we gain and what do we risk? When it comes to Iran, the answer becomes clear very quickly, because engaging with Iran doesn't just come with costs, it comes with consequences. First were sanctions. The United States has imposed some of the toughest sanctions in the world on Iran, targeting its oil, its banks, and its access to global trade. But here's the key detail. These sanctions don't stop at Iran. They extend to anyone who does business with it. Which means a country trading with Iran risks losing access to the U.S. market, the U.S. financial system, and even facing penalties on its own companies. And for most countries, that's a risk they simply cannot take. The United States and its European allies dominate global trade, finance, and security, so aligning with Iran doesn't just add a partner, it creates friction with far more powerful ones. Trade barriers, reduced investment, strained diplomatic ties, instability. Iran is involved, directly or indirectly, in multiple conflict zones across the region, which means getting closer to Iran doesn't just bring opportunity, it increases exposure. Exposure to tensions, escalation, and conflicts that can spiral quickly. Now compare that to the benefits. Yes, trade exists, but it's restricted, unpredictable, and difficult to scale. Iran's economy is under sanctions. Its currency is volatile. Even basic transactions become difficult. So businesses hesitate, governments hesitate, investors stay away. So the equation becomes simple. On one side, limited upside. On the other, loss of access to the world's largest markets, strongest currencies, and most powerful alliances. And when you put it that way, the decision is obvious. Because in geopolitics, countries don't take risks they don't have to. Especially when the downside isn't just economic, but strategic. That's when countries step back. And this is exactly why. Even countries that don't openly oppose Iran still choose to avoid it. But here's the part most people miss. If this was only about sanctions and economics, countries like Saudi Arabia or the UAE could still find ways to work with Iran. But they don't. Which means something else is driving this behavior. Another factor is trust, or more accurately, the lack of it. Iran doesn't just operate differently, it operates with a completely different playbook. It doesn't just maintain the system, it sometimes tries to reshape it. It pushes influence beyond its borders. It supports aligned groups, and that makes its actions harder to predict. And in geopolitics, predictability is everything. Because when a country becomes difficult to rely on, cooperation becomes risky. And when that happens, distance becomes the default. There is another layer to this equation, one that is rarely stated openly, but deeply understood across the region. Many of Iran's neighbors are monarchies, systems built on stability, continuity, and control. Iran represents something very different, a revolutionary model, a system that, in 1979, replaced a monarchy with a completely different form of governance. And more importantly, a system built on the idea that political systems can be challenged and even replaced. That idea alone carries weight, because for monarchies, stability is not just important, it is essential for survival. So the concern is not only external, it is internal. Because influence does not always cross borders through armies. Sometimes it spreads through ideas, and in a region where populations are young, connected, and aware, ideas travel fast. This creates a different kind of risk. Not invasion, but influence. Not war, but internal pressure. And for monarchies, even the possibility of instability is unacceptable. Because for these governments, stability isn't policy, it's survival. This changes the calculation completely. Because now the question is no longer, is Iran a difficult partner? The question becomes, could Iran create pressure from within? And when that question exists, even without clear intent, distance becomes the safest strategy. So by now, one thing is clear. Engaging with Iran comes with risk. But here's the real question. What's the alternative? Now consider the alternative. For many countries, especially those aligned with the United States and its Western allies, the benefits are clear and immediate. Partnerships with global powers provide access to the world's largest markets, the United States, Europe, and other advanced economies. This means easier trade, greater investment, and long-term economic growth. It also provides access to the global financial system, stable currencies, banking networks, and capital. Then there is security cooperation. Many countries in the region rely on the United States and its allies for defense partnerships, military technology, intelligence sharing, and protection against external threats. This creates a security umbrella, reducing uncertainty and strengthening internal stability. And beyond economics and security, there is predictability. These partnerships are built on established systems, clear agreements, and long-term alignment. For governments, this matters, because stability is not just about avoiding conflict. It is about creating an environment where growth is possible. So when countries compare both paths, one that offers integration into global systems, access to capital, security guarantees, and predictable outcomes, and another that involves sanctions risk, uncertainty, and limited economic upside, the decision becomes straightforward, not ideological, not emotional. So in the end, this is not about religion, it is not about identity, and it is not about open conflict, it is about calculation. Countries avoid Iran not because they are forced to, but because, from their perspective, it is the safer decision. Iran represents risk, economic risk, political risk, strategic risk, and in geopolitics, risk is something countries are trained to minimize. Because countries don't just choose allies, they choose which risks they are willing to live with. And Iran is a risk most countries choose to avoid.